What up, what up, what up? First things first, thank you all for following us on Facebook. We appreciate the love, the likes, the laughs. Help us spread this fellowship in righteous manner by sharing one of the videos with somebody on your timeline today. They need this joy. They need this culture. Second thing we want you to do is go over to YouTube if you're not already on there. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. We appreciate the correspondence. And turn your notification bell on so you know whenever we're dropping new content. If that's not enough and you need to get in touch with us, hit us at Gmail at the F.I.R.M 365 24/7 anytime. What up, world? This is the F.I.R.M. Let's get it. What up, world? It's the F.I.R.M. You already know what time it is. It's time to come to the table and sit down and have some fellowship. So we want you guys to, you know what I mean, put aside any distractions. If anybody's starting to distract you, invite them in. Tell them to have a seat with you. You know what I mean? You're going to want to be there today. You're going to want to be here for our special guest that we have, the show that we have lined up for you guys tonight. It is a treat. It's going to be provocative. It's going to be informative. It's going to be ultimately, I think you're going to find very encouraging to those who have been institutionalized by some doctrines, some denominations, some organizations, some corporations. At the end of the day, it's good to have conversations that you wouldn't normally have. And we encourage you, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube, to comment, like, share, and subscribe, but also comment while we're on live. It does say 9 p.m., but we're at a special time right now, live at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here, and that is 10:30.
10:30.
Yes, 5:30 here is 10:30 over there. So our guests, we won't hold them up all night, but we definitely want to get into some great stuff. So hello, everybody. We appreciate you guys coming on in. Continue to come on in. What's going on? Shout out. Yeah, hey, what's up? You know, I like the repeats, the what up. You know, we got to greet each other. Absolutely. So give it to me one time. Give it to me 2 times. But if you give it to me 3 times, that's must be fellowship.
That's something serious.
Ulises, how you doing today, man? Greet the people, man.
Man, what's going on, everybody? Hopefully everybody's doing well. We want to thank you personally for taking the time out on your Saturday to spend time with us. You know, there's a whole lot of things y'all could be doing, but y'all chose to spend time with us. So we definitely appreciate it. We definitely appreciate it. So we're just hope that y'all had a great weekend. You know, my weekend is good here in North Carolina, US of A, North Carolina. I am struggling, bro, with pollen. Me and pollen have been going toe to toe, man.
It's a warfare.
But hey, and nothing that medication can't take care of, as they say. Just
a little bit.
Not meditation, but medication.
I'm not mad at you.
So, man, but all is good, man. And so we definitely appreciate the time. And yes, absolutely, Sharon. We love, you know, covering topics such as this because it really strikes, you know, it really strikes, man, part of a passion of mine. You know what I mean? To really engage the people in difficult conversation.
Yeah,
this is a difficult conversation that needs to be had within those who are in the church, those who are out of the church, those who are on the fence about, you know, if there is a God, is there a God? You know, there's a whole lot of things that goes on. So it's a conversation that needs to be had. So I'm super excited about it, and I hope y'all are super excited about it.
I was gonna piggyback and say, man, huh?
Go ahead. Piggyback and what?
No. I was just gonna piggyback and say, and there's conversations and topics that we don't even know that we should be having. If we don't open the door, if we are not inviting, if there is no access, or we're not knocking at other people's doors who are saying very intriguing things in our time frame, you're doing yourself a disjustice. You're doing your generation a disjustice, because you're going through life and the value is not in a lot of the things that you can touch. Sometimes the value is in um, other things, principles, understanding, mental wellness. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the things that is ravishing our society, our generation today, is mental unrest. Like, people are really going through things. And
Absolutely.
I know that in all you're getting, you're supposed to get understanding. So with that, I would say peace of mind has to be a priority. You know what I'm saying? You have questions that you don't have peace of mind about. People have answers to the questions that you don't have peace of mind about. But if we invite them in and you guys join with us, you know what I'm saying? We'll be engaging, and we want you to also engage. We'll alley the questions to our guests if they see some that intrigue them. Hey, bring them on. He said he's not afraid of the question. He said there's no need to protect him in this fellowship. That's the type of fellowship I like. So let's get to it. Without further ado, welcome everybody to the F.I.R.M podcast.
This is the F.I.R.M.
The F.I.R.M.
This is the F.I.R.M.
Fellowship and
Fellowship.
Nothing happens off the tape.
What up, world? This is the F.I.R.M. All right, everybody. Welcome, Phil Drysdale, to the F.I.R.M podcast. Come on now.
I love it. Hey guys, it's good to see you.
Yes, sir.
I'm excited.
People greet Phil.
I'm excited to be with y'all. This is gonna be great.
Awesome.
You guys have production value. Like, I put out a podcast a couple of times a week, and I take it off the camera and I just put it online as it says. No messing around, no editing, no touching up. And you guys are like, you're doing this live? I'm like, how are you doing this? This is like amazing. Like,
a lot of finger work, a lot of finger work.
I'm impressed.
A lot of tendonitis. No, I was playing.
If the camera pans down, right, you're like working about 8 different boards, moving things around. Yeah.
Don't give away the mess.
You've got like a whole team just behind the scenes.
Yeah. They're all back there working.
It really blows the theory away that men can do 2 things at one time. Men can.
Hey man, they all, you know what I'm saying? All right now.
But welcome again, Brother Phil, to the F.I.R.M podcast. We appreciate your time. We know in the UK it is past my bedtime for sure. I'm 42 years old, so anything past 9 o'clock, people are pushing it. But but if you can, man, kind of give the people an introduction of who you are. You married, kids, where you from, things of that nature.
Sure. So I'm originally from Scotland. I'm married. I don't have kids yet, so actually this is quite early for me. And because I work with Americans mostly, I usually work till about 2 or 3 at night most nights. So
oh wow.
It can get intense. I was born a PK. I've grown up in Christianity my whole life. And over the time, I ended up traveling and speaking around the world and would speak in hundreds of churches a year and do all that.
Oh, wow.
And over time, I started to realize, man, there's something going on in the church that most people don't seem to be aware of in the church. And I'd get all these people coming up to me at the end, right? You go, after you give a message or something, you'd say, hey, come speak to me afterwards. If you want someone to pray for you, someone to talk to. And people would line up, but they would line up and they'd come close to you like, Brother Phil, my pastor says that this is the thing, but is it the thing? Or they'd go like, I've been thinking about this,
Is
but
it a thing?
I don't know if that's true. Or I Googled this and it doesn't seem to be true, but I know if I say that in my church, I'm going to be in trouble. And I started to realize there's a lot of people in church that are not comfortable, have questions, have doubts. And actually, as I started to help those people, I found out there's a lot of people outside of the church that would quite like to be in the church, but they're not able to be anymore because they had those questions and doubts. And so that's my life. My focus now is working with those people that are either in church and struggling, have come out of church and are navigating that and learning that, or maybe are somewhere in the middle and trying to figure out what the heck way is up, you know. And
Are you still going around speaking to people publicly, or?
I tend not to. Generally speaking, when you help people that are transitioning from going to church to not, most pastors don't like you to come to their church anymore, right? If we're going to be honest, I'm not the guy to have come to your church. Because I can work with people wherever they're at. So I can come to a church and help them and give them a great Christian message and all of that great stuff. But they might go home and Google my name and check out my Instagram or check out my website. And most pastors are going to be a bit nervous by some of it because I'm catering for atheists and agnostics and Christians and Buddhists and people that don't even know what they are, you know, the whole spectrum, even just different types of Christians. Some pastors don't like that, right?
Yeah. That's too much conversation.
When you work with people beyond just one kind of grouping within Christianity, generally speaking, that type of traveling doesn't happen. So I still travel maybe like 9 or 10 times a year, obviously not the last year, but I jump into America a few times a year and hang out with people in homes and do some like regional kind of gatherings to help people meet each other and connect, which can be a really big deal when you've lost church. That's tough. You guys know how important it is to have like that connection, that fellowship, that community, and so helping people build that as well is huge. The
one thing I was saying as we were looking into your work, looking over your what you have publicly available, and you know, on your live streams or your store IG stores. But the one thing that I notice is I feel like you're in the sense of the word a shelter. I'm like so my question is like what drove you to be somewhat of a compassionate shelter for people in such a, this is a when people begin to question things, folks are kind of like hands off. Mm-hmm. It's almost like you're going astray and I can't help you because you might somehow take me to, I don't know. It's
no one wants that, right? No one wants that.
Right. Your curiosity is contagious. But it seems like what drove you to be like a compassionate shelter for those going through such a difficult time, in their process?
I myself have gone through my own journey of pain and suffering and doubt and questioning and trying to figure out how things work in the church. And I tell you, going to as many as 400 churches a year and speaking, that was like 3 or 4 meetings a day sometimes. You get to see a lot of different types of church in a lot of different ways, and you get to see how the sausage is made, right? Because you get to hang out behind the scenes.
Exactly.
And so lots of different questions came up for me, and so I went through that journey and found, gosh, I don't have many people to talk to. This is quite hard and painful and it's quite scary, existential doubt and questioning and all that. But as you're talking to all these people, as you're traveling around the world and having an online presence tends to attract people to you who don't have anything else. They're looking for some sort of community online. I'm sure you guys have experienced that people come to you and they maybe don't feel as comfortable in their church, but they're really excited to ask questions on YouTube or Facebook and engage with you and talk with you. So as you start talking to these people, what you realize is if you sit down and you go, you know what, when I was a very comfortable, happy, conventional Christian, I couldn't move 10 feet in any direction without finding another Christian mentor, pastor, elder that would come alongside me and help me. If I had a problem, they'd be there. If I had a question, they would be there, depending on the question. But, whatever, generally speaking, there's no shortage of people that are there to help another person that is in a comfortable place within church and Christianity. But as soon as you start questioning your faith, as soon as you start asking questions that have maybe really problematic answers, or maybe we don't even know the answers, sometimes that's worse than having the wrong answer, is not even having an answer. We don't like that. As soon as people start... That's the worst, right? As soon as people start doing that, they really quickly find, God, there's no one out there that can help me. I feel really alone. There's a lot of people that can help, but it's hard to find those people, right? You leave, maybe let's say you're a Baptist Christian, right? And then you one day go, you know what, I'm not so sure about this. I think, the Spirit of God is moving on people today, and he fills us with the Spirit, and we should speak in tongues and raise our hands during worship. I think I'm different. I'm not a Baptist anymore. I'm going to be a charismatic. It's pretty easy what to do, right? You're in Austin, Texas. You type in charismatic church in Austin, Texas, and you know some churches to check out. Don't check out the Baptist. I've done that, and I'll check out charismatic. But what do you do when you go, I'm not so sure I can fully believe that God punished Jesus to save me from my sin? Which church do you go to, right? There's maybe some churches out there, but they're hard to find, right? Yeah. And most of us don't talk about that remotely, right? At least we talk about, the charismatics over there, they're crazy. But we talk about it so we know where to go when we decide maybe they're not crazy. Yeah. But when you're going through that process of changing your beliefs, questioning, doubting, and you're going, this isn't for me anymore. Maybe I don't feel like I can go to church every Sunday. What happens is you go, well, where do all the people that don't go to church every Sunday go? I want to hang out with them. But there isn't the church for people that don't do church anymore. Maybe there is in some cases and in some contexts, but on the whole, that's a hard group to find, even though there might be 5 on your street, right?
Right,
you don't know.
Right.
No,
Right next door.
And Phil, like, you brought us because, like, you're not the only PK in this group. Flavius was a PK, myself was a PK. So we have that in common. So, and you mentioned earlier that you went through some hurt, some situation that happened. So if you can kindly talk about that, what brought you to this place where you was beginning to question certain things and brought you to this place where you are today?
Sure. I think as we live life pushes us and tosses us and turns us and prods us in different ways that cause us to question what we already believe, right? We believe God always heals, and then your sister gets ill and doesn't get healed. And you go, oh, I got to question that belief now. I got to explore it. I got to look at it in a new area. Or you believe that, people that aren't saved, when they die, they go to hell. That's just the way it is. There's a prayer you pray, and if you don't pray it, you go to hell. If you do pray it, you go to heaven. And then one of your closest friends or a family member that dies that didn't accept Jesus. And you go, I cannot fathom how God is going to burn that person for trillions of questions, trillions of years, zillions of years. Yeah. You're like, I'm starting to question, is that a good God? Is that a loving God? At some point, it feels like a bit of a vindictive God. I can see it being just at a certain point, right? Even like Hitler, it's like, how many billions of years do you burn Hitler? Maybe quite a long time, right? We're not big fans of Hitler generally, I hope, right? I hope I'm not alone on that, right? Nod with me, guys. Right? But at a certain point, right, at like, 8 million trillion years, at some point, Hitler's burned and God's just being a bit of an ass, right? He's been a bit of a vindictive person. At some point, Hitler's burned to the point where it's like, okay, we kind of paid him too extreme. So people start asking that question, and these are the questions that I'm asking. I'm going, what is going on here? Like, that doesn't line up. Or I look at the Old Testament, and I read these passages about God going, hey, I want you to go into that town, I want you to kill every man, every woman, every child, and then I want you to kill all the animals. But you can keep the young virgin girls and divvy them up amongst the soldiers. And then I look at Jesus, and I go, can I see Jesus give that command? Because Jesus gave that command. If we believe that God and Jesus are the same essence, being, nature, and that if you see one, you see the other, then genuinely, Jesus told us, hey, go kill every man, woman, child, but keep the young girls to rape. That was the command. That's in our Bible. And so you start looking at it and you go, oh, I'm going to have to figure out how that one works. Because the Bible's the Word of God, and I've got to deal with that, right? And so as I'm growing and developing from a very young age, I'm asking questions all the time. Whether it was some extreme situation like someone I love dying or becoming very ill or my own illness or things like that, that could cause questions to arise. But sometimes it was just, I'm reading my Bible, I'm doing my diligent Christian duty, I'm reading in quiet time, and you turn the page and you read and you go, uh-oh. Has anyone ever done that, right? You're like, whoa, that's in there? I don't remember that part in Sunday school, right? And so for me, there was just,
There's a lot of
there's
those,
always been questions. I've always questioned, I've always looked at things, and often I find a great answer, and I'm like, oh, that's it. It's a brilliant answer. I'm glad I read those 4 books, and I found the right answer in that book there, and now I know the answer to that, and I can move on. And that happens a lot for a lot of us. We find answers to our questions, and it brings contentment, peace. We can move forward. But sometimes you don't find answers, or sometimes what's worse is you find an answer that causes you to no longer be able to believe some of the same things anymore. And so you go, oh, I found an answer that isn't in a lot of the ancient texts. Huh. Gosh. So someone picked that verse to be in there out of 27 different parts of manuscripts. We picked that one over the 26. And, things like that are a real reality. And so you start to go, well, who made that choice? And then you start thinking, so everyone goes through these processes. And a lot of people presume that one of the memes behind people leaving the church today, one of the memes about people going through a deconstruction of faith, that's the buzzword these days, is deconstruction. One of the memes is that these people weren't serious about their faith. They never really got saved. They never really knew God. If only they knew the Bible better, they would have been safe. They'd have been secure. Right. But actually, when you look at the research, when you look at the data, what's interesting is if you grab people that have left the church, and if you grab people that have deconstructed their faith, on average, those people, compared to the average people in a church, they know their Bible better. They spent more time reading it. They spent more time in quiet time. They spent more time praying. They're more likely to be regular attenders. They're more likely to be volunteers. They're more likely to be on staff. And actually, they're more likely to be a pastor, right? Wow. And these people, generally speaking, of course, there's some people that are like, I don't really care. I'm just going to leave. Of course, that happens, right? But generally speaking, that's not true. Actually, what happens is it's because they were so serious about this. They took it so serious and they looked so closely and they took it so fervently and passionately and pursuing God and wanting to be close to God. And that's why they're reading the Bible so much. That's why they're asking these questions. That's why they're trying to figure out the nature of God so they can please God. They ran into some walls along the way and they went, this isn't adding up anymore. I'm going to have to change some beliefs to make this add up, to make it work. And so often what's funny is we look at people that deconstruct, or we look at people that leave church and we say they backslid or they walked away from the faith. But what's interesting is the data is there that most people that left church or walked away from the faith actually have a stronger faith than they had before. And what's funny is if you're saying this from within the church, they probably have a stronger faith than you. A lot of them, right? Because that's what the data shows.
Let me piggyback off that question on the idea that you broke down so clearly as far as backslide from the faith. How does that translate? Because deconstruction is very broad. Like you said, it's the deconstruction network. It goes out. You said you dealt with Buddhists. You dealt with other faiths. Is their deconstruction process similar to the backslide ideology or theory? Like, are they slipping away from what they believe, and you're catching them at that? What is that encounter?
So one of the things that's fascinating, so deconstruction, we would look at certain things like a faith group, right? So you look at an atheist or a Muslim or a Christian, we go, oh, well, I know what a Christian believes, right? Maybe like we could go Catholic, Coptic, Protestant, Baptist, Methodist. Okay, they believe slightly different things. But a Christian on the whole, I could probably go, well, they probably believe that Jesus is the Son of God, died, rose again, and you're good if you believe that. Roughly, most of them will agree at least on something somewhere in the middle. And so we can say, oh, a Christian believes at least that. And maybe they have a different opinion on the end times or this or that, but we can kind of find something in the middle. Same with an atheist. You can go, oh, well, atheists, generally speaking, all believe that there is no theistic God. Or at least that we cannot know that there isn't a theistic God. A Muslim believes that the Prophet Muhammad came to represent God and to give his holy words and create this Quran that we follow. Like, that's helpful. A deconstructing person, whether they're coming out of Christianity, coming out of Islam, they can come out. You can deconstruct as an atheist. Deconstruction isn't about Christianity as it matters. It's actually a much broader thing, but we're talking about it generally as it relates to Christianity. So as someone deconstructs Christianity, what it's about is not what they believe. It's about what they used to believe. And so what's really helpful to remember is that people that are deconstructing do not believe the same thing. They used to believe the same thing. Right. And so we're not pointing at a group and going, these guys don't believe in God, or these guys do believe in God, or these guys are Christian, or these guys aren't Christian. Because actually you'll find in that group, as people question some core values of theirs and they move on, many of them stay Christian, many don't. Many stay Christian, and then further along the lines lose their faith, whatever we mean by that. But when I say that, I just mean they're stepping away from a conventional Christian model. Many people become atheists and then later on go, actually, no, I quite like some of this Christian stuff. I just can't agree with all of it. So I'm going to go back into Christianity, but a different model. Maybe I'll become a progressive or a Lutheran or, whatever. And so it's about a trajectory of moving away from the faith tradition that you came from. It's not about believing a certain thing. And so, one of our early studies, we looked at, do people attend church that are deconstructing? And we found that over a third of them still attend church more than once a week. And so people go, oh, the deconstruct, they don't even care about church. And it's like, well, actually, a third of them are attending like really regularly, But what we did find is the longer that happens, church attendance drops. It does. There's no question of that. It drops even further. It goes down to 15% or so. And so it does seem that the longer people ask these questions, the longer people seek answers outside of the conventional Christian model, which is often where you have to search for these answers because they're not given in the conventional Christian model. The longer that happens, the less likely people are going to be able to hang around a church, whether they choose to leave or whether they're encouraged to leave, which both happen very often.
We do have a question from the audience. William Stokes asked, do you think Christians are afraid to ask certain questions because the answer would shake their faith in Christ?
That's a good question.
It's a brilliant question, and I think you're spot on, William. You're spot on. I think a lot of Christians, I don't think that's always the case, and I don't think very often we're conscious of it, right? That's definitely a subconscious protective thing. I don't think we actually sit there going, I've got a question. No, don't do that. You might lose your faith. I think very few people actually think that out loud in their head, go walking through that process. But I think subconsciously a question might arise and we quickly kind of plow through that, right? We have a protective mechanism that kind of kicks in and goes, all right, quick, turn that page. Let's not look at that bit where he said you could, whatever, do this or do that. Let's move on quick, right? Well, God's vaporized that guy for that? That seems kind of mean. Oh, let's just move on, right? Let's quick turn, because if you turn the page, you'll find some good stuff, right? Pretty good stuff throughout there. So I do think that's a concept and a component of what's going on is that we're all very fragile beings, right? We all have an ego that we have developed that gives us an understanding of this world and who we are in it. Whatever we believe, we're doing that from birth. We're trying to figure out who is this, what is that, and just the identity we give to that's my mom, that's my dad. That gives us an identity, right? We're doing this constantly, and so if you talk about creating an identity, creating an ego, your faith is a huge one. Most of us grew up in church, right? PKs everywhere, right? So you look at this and you go, oh, if I start questioning this, am I gonna have a job? What's my purpose? I gave my whole life to this. Is that a waste? I married this person because I didn't want to sleep around, and then I fooled around with them, and I thought, oh God, I better really commit to this one, and I do like them. But then you're starting going, well, is that a good idea? And I've got 8 kids with this person, or all sorts of different ways this can start to play out, and so our brain just goes, hey, this is gonna go bad, right? This is an existential crisis on your hands. Let's just shut down some of these questions and let's keep moving on because this is nice. And for most people, until the pain of staying, until the pain of not asking that question is greater than the pain of asking it, they won't ask it. I think that is very true for most people. I think generally speaking, you require a big enough push where you go, I can't hide from that question anymore. I need to know the answer to that. And I know it's going to maybe cost me some friends, some family. I know it might cost me some work opportunity or some money or whatever, depending on how people are wrapped up in it. Yeah, I think this happens a lot. I see this a lot with pastors. I work with a lot of pastors behind the scene that are going through this process, but they went through school, went straight into a seminary, became a youth pastor, associate pastor, now they're a senior pastor, now they've been a pastor for 30 years and they've got a house and they're paying college bills and all sorts of stuff, and they're going, I actually am not qualified to do anything in life apart from be a pastor right now, and I've given my whole life to this, and now I'm questioning this. What do you do, right? I'm not going to say it's wrong for the pastors to go, maybe I'll keep my head down and kind of keep doing it. I'm not even going to say it's wrong.
Like you're in too deep. What can I do with this information?
Yeah. So we all do that from a small place to a big place. Sorry.
I think what is so amazing, like in my personal life, grew up in church, PK, whatever the case is. Then I eventually became an associate pastor of a well-established church here locally, and one of the things in the last year and a half, it's been like a monumental shift in my life where I have my, people call it whatever they want to call it, but for me, it's all about me experiencing God differently. Being taught a certain thing, like an example, like I was sharing with Flavius the other day, like 15 years ago, you couldn't tell me that tithing was wrong. I was, big proponent. You got to give your 10%. You got to give your 10%. Now it's like, now that I did my own study,
or you're cursed,
or you're cursed with a
even
curse,
though you're blessed, but you still.
I'm just saying, let's confuse the people.
You figure it out.
So that's part of what I consider my deconstructing, where I believe in God, I believe in His love, I believe, because I'm a big proponent on the love of God. I mean, I could talk about that for hours and hours and hours on end, but it's amazing, how your experience, because everything is based off of it. Everything that you're talking about, we're talking about, is off of experience. My experience has brought me to this place. Your experience has brought you to this place. And so so my question is, like, how important, when it comes to deconstructing or finding your answer in another form, like, how big does experience play?
Sure. I mean, if we're going to be honest, and I think it's very hard for us to be honest, right? This maybe goes back to what William was talking about. If we're going to be honest with these things, it can be quite a crisis suddenly. We like to think that we are believing something that was given to us from on high, an absolute truth with no possible question of doubt. But even if you heard God speak to you, that was an experience, and it was subjective, right? You might have had some really bad cheese and having a bit of a trip, right? I don't know, like, whatever, right? You might have eaten some funky food. You might have been kind of daydreaming because you had a bit of bad sleep. I don't know. It's your experience, right? I'm not going to question it, but what I'm saying is it was your subjective experience that you're saying. And then you go, well, we've got a Bible. That's absolutely objective. And I'm like, yeah, to you. But if you go back far enough, a bunch of random guys in Rome went, all right, we all here? Yeah, okay, cool. Which books are we going to put in? Well, I think we should put that one in. Well, I feel God saying that one. And I feel God saying that one. And then you say, well, you feel God saying that? No, God told me. And I'm like, that's still a subjective experience of some random dude in Rome going, yeah, I think that one. And we have definitely excluded books that appear to be authentic books of Paul. And then we've actually included books that are not authentic. Certainly Paul didn't write. Maybe his associate wrote it or something like that. But we've got that dynamic in play. So my point being, everything is an experience, and everything. So we like to think, I think it's really quick, people write people off that are asking these questions and going, I'm asking these questions and I'm wondering and I'm exploring, and people go, that's just like, you're just like allowing your feelings and your emotions and how you feel and perceive things to let you stray away. But the truth is, we are all doing that, right from the fact where you go, well, I feel this is the right church for me. Even if you hear, oh, God told me to pick this church. How many people have you guys have been around the church long enough, right? You've had a friend that comes to you and is like, hey, God told me that girl over there is going to be my wife. And you think, yeah, I'm sure he did. Right? You hear that and you're like, uh-huh. And then like a week later you find out, oh, yeah, no, that did not happen, right? That was... somebody out. No. Maybe your penis told you that that girl would be your wife, right? Or whatever. I don't know. But like the point being, we can all hear things through a perspective, and it can be warped, and it can be what we want to hear. Even if we actually hear God speak to us, right? Maybe you're praying to God about a job, and God says, "Don't worry about this job interview you've got. I'm going to give you a job." And you're like, "Yes, okay, great. I'm going to get this job." You go into that interview, you nail it. They get back to you and they say, "You didn't get the job," and you're like, but God said I was going to get the job. And then you get another job a week later and you go, oh no, he didn't. If I go back and think about what he actually said, he said, don't worry about this job interview. I'm going to give you a job. I thought he meant this job interview is going to go well and I'm going to get a job. So even if we are hearing God's, we can still warp it, right? And anyone that's married or has a partner knows that we can do that, right? We can hear our partner. They say one thing and we hear a very different thing, and vice versa, right? I say something and they're like, what did you say to me? And I'm like, whoa, that was not what I said, but you're obviously having a bad day and that went really badly. I'm sorry, let me reframe it. So we can all do this, right? We can all mishear, misinterpret, and we all do this whether we think we're in this infallible box or not.
I was going to say, I hear my wife saying, get the kids, and I hear, the kids are fine.
Yeah, exactly, right. They'll float naturally, it's fine.
You're good. I didn't hear him.
So we all do this, is my point.
Yeah, we do have another question from Jimmy Ton.
Yeah.
Is doubt wrong?
It's a tough one, right? Because I would say absolutely not, and I would say that the Bible gives us a model of doubt all the way through. You see amazing leaders within the Bible. You see the psalmists doubting nonstop, right? You see Solomon and having these profound existential crisis and questioning everything and going, "This is all meaningless. What's the point?" You see the prophets going through huge seasons of doubt, going, "God, are you even there?" Like, this happens consistently throughout the Bible. Throughout Genesis, we've got different figures of faith. Abraham and Sarah, right? Called the heroes of the faith. They're in that amazing chapter, Hebrews 11, as heroes of the faith. And it says, Sarah never doubted or never wavered in her faith. And then you go back and you read the story, and Sarah laughed at God when God said,
That's right.
"You're going to have a child." I always consider that doubt. And actually, God then made her call her child laughter as like a kind of like, there's such a weird passage, right? It's like she laughs at God, and then God's like, "Who's laughing?" And she's like, "No, not me." And he's like, "No, you were." And so, like, there's these moments where you're like, "Ooh." For some reason, the authors of the Bible do not associate faith with certainty, and I think the church today has associated faith with certainty. Pete Enns has a great book called "The Sin of Certainty," and his argument is that actually faith is only present when you have some doubt. When you're not sure, that's when you actually trust. Faith, the word faith in the New Testament, this epistis, just means trust. It means to lean on God and trust God. And my argument would be, if you are certain of everything, there's no need to lean on God. It's in the, you only lean on God when you're outside of your own understanding, right? It's when you cannot find peace within understanding, you have to find peace beyond it, and that comes through faith. And so I would say that the Jewish and the Christian faith traditions both value doubt, they value questioning, and they say that in that place is where actually you find the greatest faith. If you're certain, you're never going to question things. If you're certain, you're not going to be open to new ideas. If you're certain and God shows up and says something different, you're going to crucify him, right?
Right.
There's a lesson in there, maybe.
There is. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, how can you have hope in something that you've seen? That you usually have hope in what you have not seen and what's to come. So I definitely agree. It's a lot of times when you do begin to question things and you look outside of a construct, when you can, I believe that before I question a man's word or a man's testimony or men's testimony from way back in the day, I should have the boldness to question the ones around me first. And so I learned at a young age to ask questions. And sometimes, when I was a kid, I couldn't understand why everybody was saying I was black. And I would tell my parents I'm obviously brown. And they'd be like, I know what the colors are. But from a child, I always had questions about what I was seeing. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that, that's one thing that we say here on the F.I.R.M podcast. Sometimes people don't ask enough questions. Sometimes you're not asking the right question. How can you get to the right answer if you don't ask the right questions? Ulises himself has testified of how many times he done had it up to here with the Lord and the obligations that he's taking on in the name of his faith. And, and the conversation, somebody might be like, yo, I don't want to be in a room and hear that. Did you hear what he said to God? I wouldn't talk to him like
we have
that.
some amazing conversations. Yes,
yeah,
Lord.
But it's the willingness sometimes will lead you to what's best for you. And I think that a lot of people get stuck because of fear. They have a fear of the worst outcome is outside of what I know.
Yeah.
And like you said, I wouldn't necessarily say the sin of certainty, but I would definitely acknowledge the fear of certainty. There's a fear of certainty. It stays in place because of a fear of other things. One thing that I had said, if you don't mind me saying, I was telling somebody about something I was learning about the how Jesus was called the Good Shepherd. And I was saying, what really makes you good is not necessarily the fact that he would leave out to go get the one, which is something that Christians hold fundamentally. Like, you went astray. Your deconstruction is you going astray, and the Lord if we can't get you, we're gonna have to shun you, and we're gonna leave you in God's hands, or the devils, or whoever else they think is out here, demons and all them other religion stuff. But either way, no matter what they say, I said that the good shepherd is not the one, not just because he'll go get the one. It's because he knows what is out there for the one. He knows where the river is. He knows that there's more grass out there. He knows that there's existential threats out there, that there's something to fight, or something that might want to feast on this sheep. A good shepherd, you could not possibly be a good shepherd if you don't know what's outside of your gates. And that's the thing that I was telling her, I believe he's good, and I try to pattern myself as a good person because I don't stay in one place. I'm aware of what's going on, or I'm open to the conversation. And so one of the questions, I couldn't find it in the comments because they're coming in like hotcakes. But
Awesome.
but we love the participation. If your comment didn't make it up, trust me, it didn't get lost in the sauce. But there was a question in the comment section that said, what role does trauma play in deconstruction?
Sure, I saw that come up. I think it was by Sharon.
Okay.
Trauma is huge in this, and I think we often write off the process of deconstruction and say, oh, these people are just hurt. And that's terrifying to me, because if you went into an ER with a gunshot wound and a doctor went, yeah, but you're just shot, that would not be a healthy response, right? The response to someone that's been harmed is to heal them, right? Not to go, oh, well, you're just hurt. Like, that's a weird response that the church throws out there to try and dismiss people. It's not a healthy response. Yeah. And so I think, yes, people are hurt. What's interesting is actually in studies, there's a great study by Packard and Hope, who were two evangelical Christian researchers, and they were wanting to discover, why do people leave church? And so they took 1,000 people across America that had left church and said, why did you leave? And they went in deep. And their first hypothesis was people left church because they were hurt. And they couldn't find one person out of those 1,000 people that left because they were hurt. Isn't that crazy? I would have thought they would have found a few. Right. Not one person. And what they found was everyone had been hurt. Yeah, absolutely. But they never, ever said that they left because they were hurt. And what's interesting is when they questioned a control group of people in church, and they said, have you ever been hurt by church? All of them had been hurt as well, right? And so I think often hurt can cause people to deconstruct. I think it can. But I think we should not dismiss that, certainly. We should try and look at that and go, okay, well, here's some things to heal. But, I think you look at things like hurt, trauma. Trauma is a very complex one because trauma is a bit more involved. It can be a bit more subjective and experiential, in the sense of you don't know what someone will experience as trauma. Someone can go to war and come back traumatized. Another person that was serving right next to them can have gone through the same experience and not be traumatized. Yeah. And it's because of the way that the body manages to handle a situation. The situation is a threat. Their flight and other things raise up. But generally speaking, if you can conclude that and you can come to a conclusion of that threat, you don't end up with trauma stored in the body that comes up every time there's a similar instance. But if you don't get to conclude that, and there's a lot of things that Christians teach actually that are very, very likely to cause trauma responses in certain people, because they cause a flight or fright, they cause this fear to come up. You teach people, hey, if you ever watch porn, God's going to be angry with you, he's going to judge you, he's going to remove his protection from you. Well, I'm terrified because I watched porn last week. Jeez, I'm freaking out now, right? Yeah. Especially if you're a teenage kid and you're masturbating every 12 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, you are freaking out. And so, but there's no point where that comes and shuts down, right? There's no point where the threat is removed. The threat always is there now. Yeah. And so that person might become quite traumatized. And now when they think of certain things, even when they get aroused, they might have a trauma response. I mean, seriously, this sort of thing happens. And it's because of certain teachings. Whether the teaching is right or wrong, I don't want to tackle that as a theological question, but the trauma response can be there. So people in the church can be traumatized there's a lot of church abuse, certainly. We've seen plenty of that in recent years and long before that. There can be theological things that traumatize. There can be relational components that traumatize. So there's all sorts of things like that. But I do think, generally speaking, if you've been hurt and traumatized, especially by something systemically part of the church, the pastor abused you, ask questions, demand change, and move on if it's not safe. Like, are you kidding? Of course. Like, saying to someone that got a divorce because their partner was beating them and saying, well, yeah, but they just left because they were getting beat up. Yeah, I don't understand why that's a dismissive statement. That's a healthy statement. So to say, oh, they just left because they were hurt by the church, I'm like, maybe, and that sounds really healthy. I hope that they like thought it through and measured up. Like, do I want to try other churches? Do I want to like they went through their own process and journey, and trust me, one of that same study found that when people left, it was really interesting. They said, tell us about the time difference between when you first thought I should be leaving this church and when you actually left. And across those 1,000 people, the average time was 7 years. People don't leave when they want to leave church. They desperately cling on to church. People want to stay in church. Yeah. And this is that gap between 34% of people that are deconstructing go to church at least once a week. But as they deconstruct for longer, that drops down to 10-15%. What that shows is as people have a bit more time and a bit more safety and they start to question more, they find maybe community outside of the church. They feel safe enough to leave. But most people want to be there. And so people don't just choose to do this. People don't just go, yeah, I've been hurt at this or that, so I'm going to leave. But the trauma component is very complex. A lot of people only discover they've been traumatized after church. Trauma is quite a complex mental health issue. Most people will not understand that they have trauma without the help of therapists, or at least without studying trauma, which some people do. And what you'll find actually is within the church, there's quite a stigma against mental health. The church is one of the worst places to have mental health issues because, generally speaking, the church does not like mental health. We have the Spirit of God. The fruit of the Spirit isn't depression, it's joy. And things like that get thrown around. Not all churches. A lot of churches are great with mental health, but generally speaking, when people come out of the church, a lot of them suddenly find space and go, oh, I'm allowed to see a therapist, especially one that's not my pastor who had a 3-week course in seminary about how to be a therapist. I can go see one that's got a doctorate in therapy and so when they start to really explore mental health, I think that's when a lot of people retroactively look back and go, oh, I've stored some of those moments. Some of that theology has really caused some harmful default behaviors. Some people have really adverse experiences that cause really adverse reactions and live long beyond the experience.
I think when for me it's like the importance of faith is obviously important for a lot of people, but it's the misrepresentation of the God that they want to know versus God who really is the God. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a pastor may make, I'm looking at the comment section and, some people are hurt by what pastors have done. And so it's because of they have a desire to know who God is. And the one who's supposed to be, quote unquote, closest to God, or whatever the case is now misrepresenting, who God is. Like, if God is love, then love is not supposed to hurt me like this. If God is love, then I should not have been abused like this. So, coming from the concept of, if that God is love, if the idea of like what you do, Brother Phil, is you try to show people that, as Flavius said, that shelter, that safe place, that try to show them love while they go through the process, which is a commendable thing to do, because again, where people are looking for love, as the song says, they're looking for love in all the wrong places. So when it comes to God, and when it comes to love, and when it comes to representing, who God really is, do you believe that could possibly be a disconnect because again, everybody's looking for love, they want love. The idea of fellowshipping with other believers, going to church, whatever the case is centered around love. So, does misrepresenting love, the misrepresenting God, how big does that play when it comes to deconstructing?
Sure. I mean, there's a double dynamic, a chicken and egg scenario here, that we will look like the God we worship, and the God we worship will end up looking like us, right? And you can't really pick and choose which one starts which. It's just this constant cycle that exists. But go ask, well, you can't ask Fred Phelps anymore, he's dead. But, go ask the Westboro Baptist Church, his family, and say, what does love look like? Because they love people. They love people hard by telling them the most horrific things, disgusting things, most appalling acts that I would believe. I'm not going to say anyone else believes, but I believe that's some really messed up stuff, and I don't see it as love. But you know what? They do. They believe that is love because that's what God does in their context, in their understanding. Now, does that God look like them? Or do they look like their gods? It's kind of a which came first, right? It's this kind of weird cyclical thing. But I think as we grow and develop, we will, generally speaking, it's by great love and by great suffering that we as individuals grow and develop. And that can happen with a relationship with God. It can happen with a relationship with other people. It can happen through complete strangers. Often, the most profound thing you ever experience in your life is a stranger showing you love. And it makes you think, right? The Good Samaritan story is about that, right? Here's the bad guy, the terrorist, right? The Samaritans were terrorists. They were the ISIS of the day. That's why Jesus chose them, right? They were the hated group that kind of are worshipping the same God, but they're totally different, so we don't accept them. Well, that's what Muslim is today. You know, an Islamic person, they're worshipping the same God, the God of Abraham, but it's not the way Christians want, right? That is not okay. So we're drawing this parallel. This is a good Samaritan. And Jesus says, hey, what if the ISIS guy helped you out when the priest didn't, the Baptist pastor didn't, and Joel Osteen didn't? But then the ISIS guy walking down the street was like, dude, you look a mess. Let me pick you up. Let me take you to an inn. Let me pay your thing. I'm going to come back and check on you. I really want you to be okay. You'd be like, I need to rethink a lot of things, right? That story would cause you to rethink things. Not the story, but if you experienced it, God, yeah, right? And so the point being, it's through great love, great sacrifice, great suffering, these extreme experiences that we are forced to grow and question these things. And in turn, we then, generally speaking, we question our concept of God, and God maybe becomes a bit more loving, a bit more inclusive, a bit more open. Or maybe God shows himself to be a bit more loving, a bit more inclusive, a bit more open than we perceive him in our black and white, very fixed, rigid way. And we go, oh, maybe that's not the way it is. And so people will always say, well, you're just making a God in your own image. And I'm like, yes, just like you. Exactly. You're right. Correct.
Yes,
of course. That's what we're all doing. We're all doing that on one level or another. And so, you know, we'll do this as we grow and develop. And I think we will see. So the point being, everyone's trying to be loving like their God is loving. The question is, some people, what is their concept of love? And how is that framed? Is it framed on a really crazy, vindictive God? Is it framed on a God that will reward you if you blow yourself up? Is it framed on a God who will reward you if you go and kill a bunch of people in a crusade? Like, and that's so that those Christians, we are all just as bad at this, right? You know, George Bush was saying, hey, let's go and blow them all up in the name of God, right? He had the same idea. You know, so Christian, Muslim, you know, whatever we're at, atheists can all be quite fundamental, and we can all frame the world as we perceive it. It gets colored with our lens. And so I think you're right. I think love challenges people, and an experience of love that is broader and more expansive and more inclusive. Suddenly you have Christians in the 50s and 60s going, guys, I'm not comfortable with the fact we're segregating black people. It makes me really uncomfortable because God is showing me love in ways that is challenging me. And I think black people are showing me love in a way that challenges me. I treat them like crap. Almost swore that. We treat them like crap. And they're treating me with love. Martin Luther's telling them to turn the other cheek and, you know, whatever, you know. And that's causing me to question a lot. And I'm going to have to expand my concept of love. I'm going to have to think, well, does my God really have a problem? Does my God really see black and white people on a different pedestal? Really? Or whatever it might be. Exactly, right? We have a whole list here. There's a whole system, right? Yeah. And so absolutely, like this, and these are just really common examples, and they're helpful examples because now, in 2020, as much as racism, good God, how is that still such a big issue, right? I mean, please, can we grow and become anti-racist and try and work on this stuff? As much as that's an issue, it's a helpful example because I reckon you could go into any church in America and go, hey, who here is really pro-slavery and wants to reinstate slavery? And 99.9%, even churches that are quite racist, would go, no, you can't really argue that with the Bible. And yet, 100 years ago, that's exactly what they were doing. They were arguing it with the Bible. God says racist, slavery. Yeah. So I think we grow and we develop. So when people look at it today and go, ooh, well, you know, what about LGBTQ? You know, I've grown in my expansive understanding of love, and I know I've got a gay brother who loves Jesus and lives a great Christian life, and I know God loves him, and I'm pretty good with that, but it's messing with my head because I've got a few Bible verses I have to think about, right? And that's, they're in there. We got to work, figure that out. But there's also the Bible verses that were saying, hey, why don't you rape these young girls? And hey, why don't you kill all these people? You know, so we work with those Bible verses already. We just choose which ones we're comfortable working with. And right now, a big one would be that, right? So someone says, hey, I'm going to become a bit more inclusive, and my God is a more inclusive. I can see how God maybe doesn't mean that to be that, or maybe has moved beyond that. And people get upset. But they got upset when we said, hey, maybe we could stop owning people. Like that would be maybe a move forwards. And people went, no, you can't do that. And now people go, yeah, no, obviously you can't own people. At least not in America, right? We have to own people in China and the Philippines and you know, out of sight. But so I get my iPhone or something. But you know, so we're growing, we're developing, and I think our concept of love is always moving in an outward, expansive way. Love, every single decade, century you look at it, becomes broader and wider, includes more people. We become the we in the us and them. The us in the us and them is ever growing. It might have started really insular, but it's constantly growing and embracing more people. And so, you know, whatever you believe about different theologies I may have thrown out there, I'm not trying to create a big debate on LGBTQ.
Man, this is theology next door. We
there you go. I'll leave the theology to you guys then, you know. So, but I think that concept of people are growing and evolving, and I would be really surprised. We certainly already see it now. You'll see a good percentage of churches across the world go, yeah, no, that's not a problem. We are LGBTQ affirming. Like, why? What's that? What's the problem with that? That's going to be a more common thing as we move forward, for sure. It might never be that all the church are like that, but I think it's going to become more of a common thing.
Now I know that can start a discussion too.
They'll probably get some comments now. Come on, guys, get the comments going.
The comment section. Let me before we leave, I just want to say thank you so much, Phil, for really diving deep, really touching on like I told you earlier, it's your approach to things that people are like, what do you say? That really makes it palatable, really makes it inviting. So before we let you go, and you've given us so much already. So before we let you go, in our fellowship in righteousness, we just believe in treasures in each individual that we meet. So what I want to ask from you is, before you leave, what is the true treasure? What is the true gem, the most valued part to you about deconstruction that you could convey to the people so that they could see the value in the process?
Sure. I think, you know, the number one commandment throughout the entire Bible, above every other commandment, is please don't be afraid. Again and again and again, God says, please don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. We killed Jesus and he came back. We freaked out, right? We had a moment going, oh, we killed God, it turns out. That's not going to be good. But the first words out of Jesus' lips are, don't be afraid. You know, the beauty of deconstruction is it allows us to step into a place of freedom and openness and genuine pursuit of God or spirit or divine or ground of being or whatever language people start to use that's not relevant to me. I don't mind where you go. I just care that you are growing authentically and being more true to who you are, who you see yourself to be, who you see the world to be, who you see your brother and sister to be, who you see God to be. All of that. All I care about is that people have space to grow in that, and it's a safe space to grow in that, where they're not condemned, they're not cast aside, they're not berated or argued with all day. Arguing with people about this stuff never works, right?
Yeah,
you're not going to argue someone in or out of these situations.
True.
And so I think the beauty of deconstruction is it's a very real and natural part of the process. You're questioning what you believe, and you're growing. If anything, a lot of people see this as a loss of faith. And I think, generally speaking, for most people, even if they, quote unquote, lose their faith, even if they let go of a lot of conventional Christianity and call themselves something else, generally speaking, it's an evolution of faith. Generally speaking, they are moving closer to the divine. They are becoming healthier, wholer people, more full of love, more able to love their brother and sister. And at the end of the day, to me, that's the greatest metric. Jesus gave a hard metric for whether you're loving God. Only one metric for whether you're loving God or not. And it was, are you loving other humans? He said, when you love those people over there, especially the ones you don't like, right? Or the ones you think the least of, those people, when you love them, I know you're loving God. John says, if you aren't able to love your brother or your sister, there is zero chance you know who God is. He literally says, you do not know who God is, and you are a liar if you don't love other people. And so for me, you can move away from the church or from calling yourself a Christian or from using certain words like God, and you can now call it the divine or whatever's comfortable for you. I don't care. If you are moving towards a place where you are more rooted in love and love others, you are closer to God than you have ever been, and you are more God-like, Christ-like, full of the Spirit than any version of you in the past. You've grown, you've evolved.
It's beautiful because I mean, just to piggyback off what you said, Phil. Like, I mean, Jesus himself said, like, you know, the measure of love is not based on who loves you back, but it's based on who curses you, who treats you wrong. You know, can you bless those who curse you? Can you do good to those who do evil to you? So, like, if you know, if you're dealing with you know, people who disagree with you and whatever the case is, like, can you, instead of bashing them, instead of going after them, instead of being, you know, y'all are crazy, you know, can you pray for them? Can you bless them? And that's the ultimate level of love that Jesus is talking about. You know, so if you disagree, cool, that's fine. But can you do it in love? Can you disagree in love? And that is a test, because Jesus said, what? It is by our love that the people will know, that they will know that you are my disciples, by how you love, by how you love.
Man, I echo the sentiment of Miss Sharon right there, who says, awesome, Phil. She said, whoa. I think you blew a couple people's minds, you know what I'm saying? And some people gonna have to pick up the pieces along the way. But it is something that is perfect for discussion. I really appreciate the answer that you gave there at the end. I just believe that nobody in the appraisal business walks up to a house yelling, you know, I think this house is worth. I believe that it takes observation. I believe that it takes open perception. I believe that it takes some getting out of your own comfort zone, so that you can properly appraise something. And like you said, the point is the effect on others. When your deconstruction process may not lead you to where others leads them, but it's just as valuable as others who are going through the deconstruction process. Some of us go through it differently. I believe that I have, to whatever degree it was for me. But I ultimately believe the things that I'm doing today are because I was not afraid. Like Phil said, I didn't fear the process. I didn't fear going through it. So anybody else who is up against the wall, seems like you're, you know, the weight of the world is on your shoulders because of the questions or queries that you may have, please get in touch with Phil Drysdale. His information is down there at the bottom. It's been scrolling past, but it's also in the description over at YouTube. So those of you who are on YouTube, you can look down there, get his website, look him up on Instagram, look him up on Facebook. Phil, is there anywhere else they can get to you, or what's the preferred access?
Instagram is great. I don't really use Facebook anymore. I automatically post stuff there, but I don't use it particularly. And so, but I chat with people for hours a day, every day on Instagram. If you want to talk about stuff, I have no interest in arguing about theology. If you want to argue about theology, you can argue about theology if you want. I'm probably just not going to give you a very good response. It won't be very fun. But yeah, Instagram is the best place. Phil Drysdale. I've got a podcast where I talk to people that are going through these different journeys, and that might be really helpful for people. It's just my name, Phil Drysdale Show. And yeah, the Deconstruction Network. If you're going through deconstruction, if you're not, that's not going to be a helpful resource for you. But if you're going through this process and you feel lonely, maybe you've lost your church, maybe you've disconnected from family and friends and things like that, the deconstructionnetwork.com is a really helpful resource because it helps put you in connection with other people locally that are going through that process. And so that might be something to check out as well. And we're doing research on that and different things as well that are really fun. And on that page, on the Deconstruction Network or on YouTube, I've got a whole series called Understanding Deconstruction that's continuing to grow and develop, but it's about 5 or 6 videos on there already, kind of helping people understand what is this, why does it happen, who does it happen to, what is reconstruction, you know, how do I talk to family members about my deconstruction, things like that. And so there's lots of stuff, and it's all free. Everything I do is free, so if you want to dive in.
Free. It's a resource that you didn't know that you needed. It's a resource that many people have been looking for. So the best thing that we can do for those who are obviously, this is a international experience that many of us are having at one point in our life or not. It's best to be in the hands of someone who values your process just as much as you do. You know, there's like he said, one of the first things he said when we got on here, he's like, I'm here to serve. That answer broke the ice like you wouldn't believe. So let him serve you, reach out to him, get his resources, ask him hard questions. Get the answers. You know what I mean? Don't stand out there and be questioning everything.
I might not give you good answers though. I just said I'll listen to your questions and ramble about something, but
yeah, you might make it in. Maybe ask it a few times. You might make it in. But either way, it's not about the response. It's about what you do with the knowledge. You grow with knowledge. Knowledge is a terrible thing to waste. Don't waste it. Well, Phil, we appreciate you being on here. Ulises, you got any last words?
Yeah.
Before we let
thank so much
for any last words.
Absolutely, I want to thank so much for the people who have hopped on and then the interactive questioning, the back and forth has been amazing. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're on Facebook, make sure you follow the page at the F.I.R.M 365 24/7. So with that being said, y'all, hey, we love y'all. Phil, don't leave just yet. Don't leave just yet. But we appreciate every single one of you guys for joining us this Saturday evening. Wherever you're watching it from, we appreciate it. We appreciate the love, and we hope that that y'all got something from it. Y'all got something from this today. It was amazing. It was very informational, very educational, and really some very thought-provoking answers. And that's what we love, and that's what it's all about. So, Flav, you got anything?
Right. No, man. Great. Thank you so much, Phil Drysdale. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for allowing us to be able to just with you internationally. It is an honor, privilege to speak to you. You have definitely brought value to our podcast. Y'all go check out Phil Drysdale podcast. Get on there. Get in that conversation. You're very articulate and you're very polite. We appreciate you. You've been a great guest. And
thank you for having me.
And everybody,
you've been great hosts.
Thank you.
It's been really fun.
But this is about you. Thank you for everybody in the comment section who was asking Phil great questions. If you want to go back and check some of that conversation out, he'll be able to do that on Facebook or on YouTube. If anybody wants to share the link, you can. But get in that conversation. There might be something that you wasn't addressed in there that really needs to be addressed. But otherwise, thank you guys for all your participation. Hope everybody has a great day and a great night. And we're out.